Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi, and today we have another Series 10 team report and another top player and good friend of mine as a guest. We have Anosh Shahar. How are you doing, Anosh?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. When I was playing the tournament, I was messaging you saying, "Hey, what does it take to get on here?" I think we all do whenever we play tournaments now. We're like, "Hey, how well do I need to do to get the Audi team report?"
Yeah, I mean, and you killed it this weekend. You got all the way to top 4 in the Victory Road Open. But before we look at your team, for anyone who doesn't know you, I don't know how someone who follows VGC would know you, but for maybe those new players, you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I've been playing since VGC 2010. I was 13 years old, and my friend was like, "Hey, did you know there's a tournament like half an hour away in New Jersey?" I'm like, "Sick." So I went there. I waited online. I played against my first round against someone I played on PBR, Pokemon Battle Revolution, the night before. We stood online next to each other for like an hour, played each other round one, and since then I just kind of got hooked on VGC. I've played in 2011 in seniors division when they introduced that, got top 4 at Worlds there. 2012, I got top 8 in nationals. 2013, I played against a great friend, Gavin Michaels, and got second in nationals and top 8 at Worlds. This is going to go a long time, but I'm going to cut to the chase. I went and got second at a ton of regionals, and top 4 at a lot of others. I've top cut a ton. Unfortunately, haven't managed to get a win at a big regional or national level event, but I still love the game. I play on the ladder when I really love the game way too much, but it's a great time, and I love pretty much all the people involved.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I actually on my YouTube recommended feed yesterday, the your 2014 regional finals against Ray Rizzo popped up, and so I got to watch that.
That was
Um,
great.
yeah,
The team was really dumb, by the way. It had to. So it was like, okay, this is the first regional new format just dropped. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put rain and all 3 choice items. It
that's.
worked.
I mean, it did. Yeah, and I mean, for those who don't know you, you are known for your creative team building. I've never seen you use anything boring before, and so that's part of why I was really excited to feature this team on the channel because you had a really cool take on Calyrex Shadow. So do you want to talk me through your team building process? I know it's a long story.
So the really short version of it is I was laddering, and I was laddering with Zygarde because how I approached early format team building this time was a little bit different. Instead of just throwing things at the wall and seeing what stuck, I was using a fun team that I knew I would be able to grind games with. I played against a bunch of people on mid to high ladder, and I just messaged them saying, "Hey, your team is awesome. Can I try copying it and making it my own? I'll give you feedback, whatever it is." So I messaged a bunch of people. I messaged someone that was using Groudon Dusclops Gravity. I messaged someone that was using the original version of this team. They are Rebecca. Their online handle is Tobacco Coco. And the person that they were building that with was our good friend Jono, actually. So those 2 people were the people that originally made the team. They were using Calyrex, Lele, Whimsicott, Entei, Dracovish, and Amoonguss. So I tried that out, and then as I played more games, I started to make my own twists, made my own optimizations, and made some changes. I brought it to both the VGC PL, the Smogon Team Tour, and PGL with Incineroar over Ditto. And as I played games, it was also Choice Scarf Lele. It was Dracovish with Mystic Water Substitute. It was a lot of fun. But then as I chatted and played more games, I made changes. The first change was putting in the Ditto because Ditto helps with Xerneas, and I needed something to help with Xerneas, and I needed something to help with Trick Room. And turns out Citrus Berry Ditto helps with both when you have a Tailwind Whimsicott. I tried a lot with the Choice Scarf Lele, and that just wasn't working well because I locked into Psychic, Psyshock, or Moonblast, and then they switched into Pokemon, and Lele lost all of its momentum, and I couldn't bring it into Kyogre, even though that's a great way to get a Tailwind into Kyogre because they had a Shedinja, and I had to lock into a good move and not Shadow Ball, and then they just took the game from there. And for Dracovish and Urshifu, I think that Urshifu is more of a side grade, but it creates a lot more consistency and puts a lot more pressure and punishes Zacian, Pokemon that click protect a lot more, and one-shots Tornadus into Regieleki a lot more consistently. So it's a side grade that I enjoyed, but I wouldn't say it's better or worse. So I took their team and just kind of made those tweaks more so than I actually built it from scratch this time. And that was a really enjoyable experience because not building from scratch speeds up the process a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I tried stealing this team and tried using it, and I think it seems like the original version that had the Mienshao, that had the Scarf Lele, is maybe a little easier to pilot. With this team, you have like been playing with it, know exactly why you made all the changes, and a lot of these Pokemon are a lot harder to use because they don't have all the like normal moves. I'm not really used to using like a Psychic Seed Lele. But do you want to talk me through exactly what the movesets do on each of these Pokemon and why all the moves are there?
Okay, so let's start off with the Psychic Seed Lele. So the Psychic Seed Lele survives a Life Orb Calyrex Astral Barrage, which went into really changed the matchup into Life Orb Calyrex, where I could feel comfortable bringing Lele there. It also helped a lot into Kyogre because it now tanks Water Spout relatively comfortably. So that made Lele and Whimsicott very powerful into those two archetypes, especially with it now having Protect on Lele. It's actually bringable into Rillaboom. So that was one of the first changes specifically for that. I could either add speed or I could make Lele a real Pokemon to other matchups as well. So that was the basis of that decision. The Calyrex has the substitute, the Astral Barrage. It's just how to deal damage most effectively. And I went and decided to go a little bit more efficiency in the HP stat. When you see Rillaboom all of the time, you want to hit an HP stat that's a little bit greater than than something divided by 16. So without any investment, it's 175. With 4 HP investment, it's 176. And because it's substitute, sometimes you want to spam substitute, so I went and ran 177. The Entei that went and was playing on odds, it survives Astral Barrage from Life Orb Calyrex, I think 90% of the time to be a 3-hit KO. And I think I went and calced it to take a Precipice Blade some percent of the time, but I'm not even sure about that. It was something specific that I went and wrote down, but don't have it off the top of my head. The Sacred, it didn't really matter too much because Entei just takes a lot of attacks overall. Whimsicott, the special attack investment was very important. I was originally trying, hey, maybe I can go and get a little bit more value from bulk. But Moonblast damage was so important that you have to run max special attack, max speed on Whimsicott. For Ditto, it has a really weird situation where sometimes you have to decide between, do I go max speed in case I ever run into another Ditto so I can transform into them before they transform into me? Very weird situation. Doesn't actually come up much, but what does come up is you want to be minimum speed, so that way their Incineroar comes out, intimidates you, you transform after the fact. So the speed stat on Ditto is important there. And their Shifu, it was just optimal. I just went and optimized the HP special defense speed stat. I needed to hit 139 speed specifically to outspeed Regieleki. And the rest didn't matter too much. The 20 attack EVs were to go lock up the knockout on Regieleki and Tornadus, regardless of the spreads, whatever I thought was common at the time. And that went and got me those KOs very, very frequently. So the rest was just trying to optimize between HP and special defense, just more generally, because there's like a lot of decision making and math there. I just went with what I felt comfortable.
Yeah, makes sense. And we have seen a lot more bulky Urshifu. This is pretty similar, I think, to the spread that we saw like Kunal use, that we saw Sohaib use, and other team reports on this channel.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the interesting parts of the team aren't the EV spreads. Obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into those, but you have a
Yeah.
lot of interesting move choices. So do you want to talk me through, I guess, for example, why do you have a helping hand on Urshifu?
So every single move other than Surging Strikes and Protect on Urshifu is bad. They're all bad, and I wish that they were good. Close Combat lowers my defenses, which makes it bad because now it gets knocked out. Helping Hand, on the other hand, Urshifu's a fake out, gets fake outed all the time. It's fake out bait. So what I can do is I can take that turn, use Helping Hand. It opens up a Calyrex plus Urshifu lead where I can Helping Hand get a lot of momentum. It also strengthens Entei Urshifu, where I can go and Helping Hand Sacred Fire to get the clean knockout on Zacian, to get the clean knockout on Rillaboom. And that's very, very valuable. The Close Combat and Helping Hand, I was considering U-turn until I realized I don't have an Incineroar Rillaboom, so I can't actually U-turn into Fake Out. I can't U-turn into Intimidate. So U-turn just wasn't playable. And I played against enough bulky waters that Close Combat came up, especially into the Urshifu versus Urshifu mirror matchup. Like, I go take the Close Combat, I take the Surgic Strikes, whatever, and it's a lot cleaner if I can follow up with a Close Combat of my own. Entei opted out of Crunch and Snarl after a bunch of testing because it turned out that Entei using Crunch wasn't really clean into the Calyrex matchup. It would only come up in very end game situations, at which point Entei already took too much damage. So instead, I tried to shift the matchup a little bit, where I would Stone Edge their Incineroar and play the Tailwind Calyrex or Tailwind Lele or Tailwind Ditto to go and improve the Calyrex matchup, because that's just how the matchup ended up playing more often as I tested it out. So Crunch and Snarl didn't actually make a difference. Stone Edge knocked out Volcarona, and it did 50% to Incineroar. And this team actually functions a lot on margins. That Stomping Tantrum does around to 33%, but doing 50% means that now Incineroar can switch only so much more. It can take, you need to do 26%, and now it's in knockout range of Astral Barrage. And that's what I need to control to go and take those knockouts more comfortably. It avoids the Incineroar switching into a Rillaboom and not taking damage and not being in KO range of Sacred Fire anymore. So Stone Edge was actually one of the most important moves alongside Sacred Fire and Extreme Speed. Extreme Speed let me knock out the Regieleki. So there was a lot of interplay between every single move choice and the rest of the Pokemon. Lastly, just the reason that it's Encore on Whimsicott and not Helping Hand was because once I made more changes to the team, I put the Psychic Seed Lele, I had the spread on Entei, and it had to bulky Urshifu. It turned more into a control team. And Encore thrives in control matchups where I can go try to prevent them from getting certain plays off or go and lock them into Protect in the end game to go and buy an extra turn to let me get a switch off without having to just go for a knockout. Because this team doesn't have many good opportunities to switch, Encore was actually really important to put on Whimsicott.
Yeah, in testing, Encore was absolutely insane when I was trying this team out. Just like people will often click Wide Guard in front of you, right? And you're just like, okay, you can just keep clicking Wide Guard, that's fine. Or people will try to click Substitute and just lock them into sub. There's so many moves that are really Encoreable, and provided you don't have Psychic Terrain up, that felt really, really powerful.
Yeah, it just forces a switch out, and that's also, and you need to be very, an open team sheet forces a switch out at least. Like in non-open team sheet, it tends to be a little bit different. But in open team sheet, it was really important because, like I said earlier, this team was really functioning on getting those little margins to add up to the point where you can clean up. There was a game that I played where I was streaming it to a chat. So I was deaf and they were watching. And then they went and said, oh, you just got checkmate in 6. So I got a burn with Entei going Sacred Fire, and then I just cut out everything they could do. So what ends up happening is this team takes one advantage and really punishes and pushes on one slot or two slots or whatever it is to go and lock them out, and plays those 50-50, sometimes speed burns with Sacred Fire, the 50-50 speed ties with Calyrex, and so on and so on. Because there's a lot of secondary effects, and sometimes you just go for it and know how, hey, if I get it, I win.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess the last move, I think you talked about the Lele, the last move that is a little unusual, or at least has some opportunity to be flexible, is the substitute on Calyrex. Can you talk me through the utility of that move?
So substitute on Calyrex is mostly to buy a turn. Calyrex gets targeted a lot. Sometimes this team has a lot of oomph, a lot of power. So what I can do is I can target another Pokemon and use substitute on Calyrex. If I have a clean KO, great, I have substitute on. If I know that their Incineroar, for example, doesn't have Throat Chop, doesn't have Snarl, well, that suddenly creates a situation I can substitute very safely, lock out one of their Pokemon. And there was actually a great line in my top 32 match where they had a crazy Mienshao Calyrex lead, and I planned my game plan specifically for that, where I was willing to sack my Pokemon, bring Whimsicott down to Focus Sash, use Sub, potentially risk Wide Guard or Ally Switch, cover for both, have both go down, and then Ditto comes out. And it was very important to have Substitute to let Calyrex take a turn, buy a turn, so I could go and better set up the board, get into Pokemon that I really want in a little bit more safely, and especially with Ditto in the correct slot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like it punishes a lot of passive play, punishes switches, punishes your opponent locking into the wrong move, and you get to encore it, right? And you have something to do there. Yeah, just like really powerful. The one thing that was a little difficult was you don't have a single, or your single target move on Calyrex is Expanding Force.
Yeah, it's a single target move. Just don't bring Lele when you need to go knock them out with single target moves, or just wait out Psychic Terrain. To be fair, waiting out Psychic Terrain actually happens a lot. Like, it's something that was another important factor of Substitute.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and I guess the other thing that I want to talk about is the Citrus Berry on Ditto. You touched on it, but I guess, so you said it was partially for the Trick Room matchup, so of course you couldn't run Choice Scarf, but why Citrus Berry over another item?
So Ditto with 155 HP is 3/4 of a Pokemon. It does not have the same HP set as Incineroar, Rillaboom, Xerneas. It has about the same HP set as Stack Attack, actually. That's actually important. It's just about 2/3, 3/4 of a Pokemon. And with Citrus Berry, it becomes equivalent to whatever you are copying. In terms of the moves, the stats, the HP now. So that's one important thing. And what I found was with Choice Scarf, even after I freed up Choice Scarf, moving it from Tapu Lele, I don't have good ways to respond to them switching in a Fake Out Pokemon other than pivoting, but almost every Pokemon I copied had Protect, or it copied a Fake Out Pokemon, which gave me access to Fake Out. With Choice Scarf, I couldn't click Fake Out. So Citrus Berry let me go and copy their Pokemon and be an equivalent without any downside given the play patterns that the team ended up forcing itself into. So it's kind of like unfortunately, you need to have access to Protect when you don't have access to Fake Out to buy a turn and kind of end up in a situation where you're not weaker than them. I copy Xerneas, but I have Tailwind up, but it doesn't matter if they switch in a Fake Out, fake me out, and go for a Moonblast, knock me out, or Dazzling Gleam to two-shot me. I buy a turn, they Protect, and do it all over again, and Ditto did nothing. So without Citrus Berry, Ditto is not really even bringable into the Xerneas matchup because they have Fake Out and other ways to go get those advantages where I have to go use Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. I have to choose which one I lock into. Who wants to do that? So I have that, and I use the Calyrex, Entei, or Shifu, Whimsicott, everything else to go and actually turn it so Ditto became a better version of their Pokemon with Tailwind, and by putting out damage into their Pokemon earlier.
And that's the cool thing, right? Is that Ditto doesn't have to turn into the restricted now. It doesn't have to be a Scarf Xerneas or a Scarf Calyrex. It can be an Incineroar. You know, you don't have an Incineroar, you don't have a Fake Out, but it can turn into the Fake Out user. That was the thing that you showed me at Toronto Regionals 2019. You beat me at 3-0. And you were running a really cool team in Moon Series with Ditto, and just like kept turning into my Incineroar and kept faking me out. It was crazy.
No, I had that was honestly that was probably one of my favorite teams that whole year. Like I remember coming up with it. I was adapting some teams. I then was like, you know what, Ditto. And then I actually remember making a lot of the building decisions at the tournament, because I was like, I had a sheet of paper over there at the Premier Challenge the day before, and I was just going nuts, saying, here are the matchups. Here's how one Pokemon interacts with the other. Here's how I can complete this. Here's what it is. Jotted 3 things down, crossed them out, wrote them down again. I wrote down like a bunch of combinations, and like that's normally how I build. Like I just kind of look at, here's what I want to do, and I just like meet the check marks, checklist here, here, here. This team was a little bit different, just like inherently, like I went and had a framework to work off of, and it was more of adjusting and optimizing, which made it a lot easier. But that Ditto is honestly just one of my favorites. I was talking with Agadi as he was reminiscing about his older series team, and we were just talking about how Ditto is fantastic.
And Ditto is also just, I think, one of the highest skill Pokemon, just because you have to position yourself perfectly to be able to use it to its full potential. You have to utilize. You have so many different creative ways to utilize it, and you have to like figure those out on the fly. And of course, I don't think there's anyone better at figuring things like that out, figuring out creative lines to win the game than you are.
Yeah, it's very fun. Ditto there's some games that happened. Justin played with his team into a Voltal team, and one of the lines that happened was they brought out Stack Attack, so he copied the Ditto with Stack Attack. He copied the Stack Attack with Ditto, and now the Voltal team doesn't have anything to beat Ditto. And that's actually it's just really funny how Ditto can be a matchup in so many different situations and how versatile it was. It actually was one of the reasons I managed to win on time in one of my sets last weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good overview of the Pokemon. Do you want to talk me through how you approach some of the common matchups?
So for Xerneas, it was really weird because there's some Xerneas matchups and modes in which I could go Calyrex and I would feel very comfortable going more of Calyrex mode. I want to get out the damage early. Entei just does too much. So I'd have something like Whimsicott, Entei, Calyrex, Ditto, usually in that order, sometimes in a slightly different order. What ended up happening as I played a little bit more both into Xerneas and into into Zacian, they had an Incineroar Regieleki lead with a Rillaboom plus Restricting in the back, and that ended up making me shift sometimes into Entei or Shifu Whimsicott Ditto, where you just opt out of Calyrex because their whole game plan is beat the Calyrex, go use Regieleki, go use Incineroar, which now has a Dark move more frequently. I think 2 weeks ago, Dark move on Incineroar wasn't too common. Now it's pretty much everywhere. So sometimes to go and opt out of that, better beat Incineroar, to go better beat Rillaboom. If they have Miracle Seed on Rillaboom, you kind of have to drop her Shifu. And that means that you pick between Calyrex, you pick the order between Calyrex, Whimsicott, Entei, Ditto. Into Calyrex matchups, I enjoyed Whimsicott Lele with Calyrex Ditto in the back. It ends up playing very interestingly because this is actually something you helped me figure out. In Calyrex versus Calyrex, first off, you take a speed tie, right? What's that, a 50-50? So what happens when you have Calyrex Ditto copying the Calyrex versus Calyrex? 3 Calyrex on the field. How do you best beat that? Like, do you just attack double Astral Barrage? That's okay. We sat there. It's like that's a 2/3 chance to win. They can't win the speed. They need to win both speed ties. Okay. But then there's another way. You go take the speed tie twice. So you go protect Astral Barrage, Astral Barrage. If they win the first speed tie, oh well. If they win the second speed tie, well, they won 2 coin flips. So it turns out that by doing that, you improve your odds to 75% from 66%. And that's just really cool because it turns out that you can go turn the Calyrex mirror into it looks bad. It's super volatile. Everything could go wrong on any moment. But you could turn the matchup into worst case 50-50, into better case 66, like 2/3, 1/3, and in like another worst case scenario, it's 75-25. So it's somewhere in that range when the game goes poorly. And that's just crazy for a matchup to be somewhere in that range when it goes poorly while being so volatile.
So that exact scenario happened to me the night before the tournament. I was thinking about playing with this team, ended up deciding to sleep in, but I was trying to get acquainted with it as quickly as possible. That exact scenario happened, and I did the math, and I was like, okay, I have to go for the protect. That's the optimal play, and I ended up losing both speed ties. And I was like messaging Inosh, is this correct? Did I screw this up? And he was like, no, like you did it right. And then it sounds like you said you won a game in the tournament because of that.
I won like 2 games because of that. Yeah, no, that was like really important because like there were times when I was like, okay, I can go for the double Astral Barrage or I can go for Protect Astral Barrage. And it was just better to go for Protect Astral Barrage, take the decision as to which one do I want to preserve. There was actually a very important situation where I went for that line, but to preserve the Ditto Calyrex, because it had Citrus Berry, so it was actually able to take the Snarls better. And that ended up getting me the end game against the Incineroar without activating the Citrus Berry. So it's like very interesting because like turns out Ditto has more HP than Calyrex after Calyrex takes Life Orb Recoil twice. So like I went and did that same line in a way that optimized it. So not only did it give me a better chance of winning, that it gave me the correct Calyrex out on the field. So it was a really important thing to like know of and to play toward.
Yeah, definitely worth keeping in mind if you use Ditto, I guess in any capacity, but specifically here. So do you want to talk me through some of the other matchups, maybe like Kyogre, I think is really common?
Kyogre, I usually win something like Whimsicott Relay. I actually also had an alternative matchup plan where I went something like Whimsicott Entei, because a lot of the time people do not lead Kyogre because they don't want to risk Kyogre lead into Calyrex, take too much damage, and then lose their response to Entei or other Pokemon. So they opt out of Kyogre lead and instead often lead Incineroar, Rillaboom sometimes, Tornadus sometimes. So I want to try to get to value there. Whimsicott Entei worked rather well as a lead with Lele Calyrex in the back. Lele is really important to Shedinja when they don't run like another attacking move other than Shadow Sneak, because if they have Shadow Sneak and you don't have Lele, you're just pretty much out of game. Ditto is sometimes important. You can sometimes bring Ditto to copy a Rillaboom or copy a Tornadus or copy something to get value, but that's hard to pull off. Like, it's not as reliable. Kyogre teams are very different from one another, so the matchup ended up, once again, being pretty volatile. It's hard to go take advantages and really respond to everything they have out at the same time. It's a lot more about how much damage can you put out into the Pokemon that can handle Calyrex, how can you get Tailwind up when they don't have Tailwind or when Tailwind's ending for them, and how do you go and just take a turn or two against Kyogre, deal enough percentage, deal like that 50% so Calyrex can take KOs, or how do you get a +1 boost on Calyrex by taking a knockout?
Yeah.
So it's really complicated, and like Whimsicott is really good. A lot of the time I actually just Moonblasted their Pokemon early on to go buy an extra turn before I Tailwind. So that's good to know as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that one of the things I really like about this team is how good it matches up into like the traditional Kyogre teams that rely on Serena and Shedinja, because those teams they are hedged really heavily to beat the style of like double fake out, using Rillaboom, abusing Regieleki to beat Kyogre. They have so many things to try to beat the Regieleki and Rillaboom. And you just don't care about any of those things. You know, Shedinja,
Oh yeah.
you have like 4 ways to hit it. You know, you have a bunch of ways to hit the Serena. The Serena doesn't bother you. You don't use priority moves other than like Encore on Whimsicott. And so I guess Extreme Speed too. But like you just have so many different ways to you have the counterplay that Kyogre players have to beat the stuff that beats Kyogre doesn't apply to your team.
They were playing really on edge whenever I would play against one of those, because if they took any damage, their team just folds very quickly.
Right.
So they need to go play very differently. And again, the Stone Edge on Entei was a really important decision. Before it was Crunch, before it was Snarl. Snarl actually didn't help in the Kyogre matchup much because I needed to deal damage to Kyogre. Stone Edge covered the Torn. It still hit Shedinja. It still hit Kyogre for more damage than Sacred Fire does at least. And all of that ended up putting Pokemon in range. So it's really funny that Entei became important into Kyogre, because it's an Entei, it's a fire type. It gets knocked out so easily, but it's still really strong into every other Pokemon, and Kyogre risks taking damage so often.
Yeah. That's one of the things that, like, so only one Kyogre made it to top 8 yesterday, even though it was maybe the most dominant team leading up to this tournament. And I wonder not only if that's because of, Palkia's success and like Eternatus' success, but also because it actually struggles a lot with the traditional Calyrex team, and there were a bunch of Calyrex that did well in this tournament. So I wonder if that's part of why Kyogre teams have underperformed a little bit recently.
I think so. I think that they have to respond they play on edge against Calyrex. It's very difficult for them to go and do much. They can still win, but it's a very volatile matchup. And when you go opt into a volatile matchup into Calyrex, when you go into now see that teams with Zacian and Xerneas are now more prepared than ever into Shedinja, they now make sure they can actually beat the standard Kyogre team. It once and increase the volatility of the Kyogre archetype so much that it became very difficult for them to get control. And when you lose control over a matchup, then it's so much easier to go X3. And I felt like that's where a lot of the Kyogre teams ended up placing. They were doing well. I actually, most of my toughest games were into Kyogre. But they would struggle against other teams and would struggle playing on point so frequently, because it's a lot more about executing their own strategy, and you can't really call out what your opponent's going to do, what they're going to bring to go and eke out other smaller advantages. It's really just about how does my team match up and how can I go and make in-game decisions, turn-to-turn basis to go and take the win. And that's really difficult to do when your opponent has responses every single turn as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And then I think the last of the big 4 restricteds we haven't talked about yet is Zacian. Do you want to talk me through how you approach the Zacian matchup?
So Zacian just, it can't get any momentum into Shifu. It struggles so much into Entei, and if it goes for close combat, then it's putting itself closer in KO range for Calyrex. It can't go for substitute comfortably because of Encore, so they end up, and you could go Ditto, copy the Zacian, and you end up with a +2, which is really funny because that's Ditto's mostly into Zacian is really important when they have bulky waters, because you copy either the bulky water or you go copy the Zacian and I knock them out a lot more comfortably. I just kind of feel like you have more damage across the board. The Zacian matchup, they have different tech Pokemon, so it's not really black and white. There's no set strategy. They just have to frequently risk getting Sacred Fire burned. They have to not protect because you have a Urshifu and Encore Whimsicott, and they have to avoid taking 40% on every Pokemon every single turn because Calyrex could clean house. And if you copy them with Ditto, then they if you copy Reggie like you with Ditto, and you have Tailwind up, now you have speed control and just take down their whole team. Like, there's so many ways to get advantages that they tend to just struggle a lot. Just don't bring Lele. Just that's the one thing you shouldn't do. Don't bring Tapu Lele into Zacian. Don't bring a Pokemon that gets one shot so easily without doing literally anything. You still take damage from Rillaboom. Blocking Fake Out isn't that important there. You have a Ghost type and Inner Focus Pokemon, and you have Bulk. Like, you're good.
Yeah. Zacian, I thought when I was testing it, Zacian was the easiest matchup for this team. But yeah, like the Ditto interaction is so cool. That's my favorite one. You just like get a little bit of speed control, and then either Calyrex or you basically, again, you really have two restricteds because you just always try to copy their Zacian, and you just have this behemoth.
And they have to throw out so much damage using Zacian is the other thing. Like, they can't put out damage well into the team without using Zacian. And that just opens up so many situations, opportunities to take advantage of them. So like, it was really fun. The Zacian matchup was always just really fun because I could play it in so many different creative manners, and they couldn't do much about it.
And so I guess those were the big four restricteds. Were there any other matchups that you had planned out ahead of time that you wanted to talk about?
I kind of mentioned Yveltal a little bit, but like Yveltal was it's just very volatile. You try to copy the right Pokemon with Ditto. You try to use Protect when they go for Oblivion Wing, and if you get 2 attacks off, say like Sacred Fire, Moonblast, like they're basically knocked out. They want to Oblivion Wing their Shifu, but if they do that, they're falling too far behind. They give you a switch in. Like, it's really hard for them, and Yveltal is slow. Sometimes you bring Lele because Lele does a lot of damage. Oftentimes you bring in Ditto because Ditto responds to the rest of their team, notably the stack. Sometimes you can even lead Calyrex because you can switch out or Protect, and they feel obligated to use Sucker Punch. And if they're using Sucker Punch, they're not using Oblivion Wing, they're not using Snarl, and they only get like 3 attacks off. So Yveltal is important because like Calyrex, Yveltal is really, we think it's much more negative. But with the plays available, this ends up feeling playable at the very least. Like, I played into Joe when he was laddering, and he took the first 2. I took 1. Then I took another one. And Entei was very volatile with Sacred Fire. And if you get a burn, I think you could even survive the Sucker Punch. It's really interesting. So it's a matchup, and I think that's one to keep in mind. Groudon was usually terrifying because they have Trick Room, and they just takes too much damage from Precipice Blades, and there's not really anything good to take it. It kind of hinged on getting Sacred Fire burn sometimes or copying the right Pokemon with Ditto. Porygon 2 is just really, really hard. Bulky Waters are really hard. I think that's most of it.
And so I guess, do you want to talk about some of the notable matchups from your tournament run? You got all the way to top 4. So you played like, what, 12 rounds, 13 rounds?
First 9 rounds of Swiss, top 32, top 8, top 16, top 4, 13 rounds, yeah.
Yeah, and so to tell me about some of the more interesting sets that you played.
So round 9, I played against someone that had Choice Scarf Regieleki. They had Incineroar. They had Rillaboom. And this game went to time. They had Calyrex. I brought Calyrex. I brought Entei, Whimsicott, Ditto. And what ended up happening pretty much the entire game was they were pivoting between Incineroar, Regieleki, Rillaboom. I was pivoting between Entei, Whimsicott, and Ditto because I copied their Rillaboom. I copied their Incineroar. And what happened was, on minute 18-ish, I went and got the knockout on the switch out, which brought the game down to 45 seconds left. And in those 45 seconds left, I was up 4-3. KO. It was 4-4 up until minute 18. On the last turn, I took the only knockout of the game, and then that ended up leading to me winning the first game because we timed out and I won on time. That was just all sorts of craziness. Game 2, I knew that I just said they're not going to opt into a similar situation. They're going to want to play a much faster game. So I went into got value out of Urshifu. I took KOs much more aggressively and ended up getting a lead that they couldn't really come back from. So I went and pivoted from the defensive-oriented mode of the team using Ditto into one that was using Urshifu. And that just kind of snowballed the game in my favor, especially because there was no Focus Sash on the Regieleki. And I knew my margins on the Rillaboom. So I went kind of got value off the Entei there, Urshifu early on, and put them further behind. So that's kind of how that matchup went, and I felt comfortable knowing that I had to switch out into whatever Pokemon between Urshifu, Whimsicott, Entei. Honestly, one of the reasons I brought Ditto in the first game was because I was like, if they bring Urshifu, I'll copy their Urshifu. So game 2, I just decided I'll bring my own Urshifu instead and skip having to risk copying an Urshifu to get one.
Mm-hmm.
There was also, I think, on my third or fourth round, I played into a Groudon Porygon 2 team. Yeah, that they went into. I just couldn't really get much value there. Because they had knockoff on the Rillaboom, they had Shadow Ball on the Porygon 2. I had to somehow go and get to. I had to go try to get Burn with Sacred Fire, ideally, or try to go and get a perfect position with Calyrex with Lele to switch in to go for Expanding Force. And that's just very difficult to pull off. So they played really well. Props to them. Torch won that in a really clean matchup. And then I kind of touched upon this in my top 32 match. That was a really offensive team. Right? Yeah, that's right. You see how the Mienshao had to ally switch and wide guard? So I kind of talked about this. I was discussing the team matchup earlier. The line into this was Whimsicott Calyrex lead. And I would protect turn 1. They would lead Mienshao Calyrex. They go for Astral Barrage, Fake Out. Turn 2, they go for Wide Guard, Astral Barrage. I used Tailwind Substitute. Whimsicott gets brought down to Focus Sash, and I went and burned a turn with Calyrex. And the only thing that's important on this turn is to knock out Mienshao, because it's not Focus Sash on turn 3. So now I go Moonblast and Astral Barrage, covering for both Ally Switch and Wide Guard. In this case, they went for the Ally Switch and trying to pressure me to substitute. So I got the double KO with Astral Barrage, but I was fully expecting them to Wide Guard again. I kept the knockout on Mienshao. Both my Pokemon faint. And then I copy the Calyrex, get the +2 Calyrex copied with Ditto. And now they don't have a Wide Guard, so I would just win from there because the Incineroar doesn't have a Dark move. And I have 2 more turns of Tailwind. So that was the line I was trying to get. Instead, I got one that worked out even better for me. But that was a really fun line and a really fun game to play. I went and won most of my games in under 20, 25 minutes, by the way. Like, most of my sets were just super snappy. Mm-hmm. So I had that come up. And I think that those 2 were probably the most interesting ones. I played against a Kyogre team where they went into did Incineroar Rillaboom lead with Regieleki, Kyogre, and then went and opted into Metagross instead of Regieleki in their last game to go and have Grassy Glide plus Bullet Punch to pressure me a little bit more offensively with priority. And that was a really cool take on their team. But yeah, I think those 2 were the 2 matchups that really, I think those 3 teams were the ones that really stood out and had really interesting matchups and games that stood out the most.
Yeah, and you had a really, really strong run. I think did you go 7-2 or 8-1 in Swiss?
I went 7-2. The Kyogre team that I played right after the Groudon team, I lost to 2-1. I went and won I won 2-0, 2-1, lost 1-2, lost 1-2. Then I 2-0'd all the way through to top 4. Like
Wow,
rounds.
that's crazy.
Like I went and won rounds 9. I need to count back. 6, 7, 8, 9, top 32, top 16, top 8. I won 7 rounds in a row, 2-0. So I was just sitting around playing Unite for like half the tournament. Like I played my games and I just opened up Unite and just like, okay, I got like half an hour to kill. So Unite is probably the biggest game changer to VGC events when they come back because we get to play them between rounds. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, so many of the games in this format are so grindy. You're spending all 20 minutes, clicking U-turn, fake out, parting shot, U-turn, and this team just says, no, I'm just going to win the game in 15 minutes. And that's great because you have I think that like, especially in a 9-round event, mental stamina is really important. And so having those breaks between rounds, like potentially, I don't know, like, again, you're a veteran, you've been playing forever, so you're probably more used to playing 9-round events. But for me, like I definitely get exhausted by round 9. And staying in tip-top shape is important, and it's a lot easier to do that when you're playing 20-minute rounds.
I went and finished a round in 20 minutes. I went out to get coffee. I came back, and because I realized after playing for so long, like it is too. I gas out normally. I needed to go start drinking coffee at events now. Like I'm not 13 years old. I don't have infinite energy somehow. Also, rounds were best of 1 back then, so that probably had a bigger influence. So like I went and got coffee, and like honestly, like I took those breaks. I took my time, and that was so important. Like in that last round of Swiss, in the game that went to time, my heart was pounding. My Apple Watch was like, hey, why is your heart beating so fast? Your heart rate's like racing right now. I'm like, shut up, this is intense. I was freaking out to like every single turn. I haven't had a game. I didn't expect to have a game like that. I never expected to have a game when I don't have to fake out inherently into the team, no intimidate, go take so long. I thought that most of these games were going to just be, I'm going to go break through them and take the advantages so fast they won't know what hit them. And then I had a game where I had to go and not allow them to get an inch, because if they did, they get Calyrex me. And I needed to go deal enough damage to Incineroar, which was healing so much from grassy terrain. The game went to time. It healed like half its health from grassy terrain. I thought I got some damage off. Turns out it didn't mean anything. My heart was racing as I was like, when the 3-minute warning came up, right after I inputted my move, I was thinking, oh no, what have I done? What do I do next? It was one of the most intense games I have played to date.
And I think you said that you recorded all of your games. Is that correct?
I missed top 16 in my first round. But other than that, I have all of my games recorded. I've started going through them. I've watched your Wonder Trade series, and I think that's going to be the best way to possibly like make them watchable. So I'm going to try that. I'll try to just speed it up and talk over it if I can. I also have notes written in for like all of the games, all the matchups. So I'll try to put those probably like in a description and try to get them on your second channel, I hope.
Yeah, and so those will be out on the Ice House YouTube channel, which is kind of where I just post VODs for tournaments. Mm-hmm. So Inosh has gratefully offered to upload all the VODs to that channel. So make sure to follow him on Twitter to make sure to know when those go up, because I don't think they will be up at the time of this video. And yeah, and make sure to subscribe to that channel too, of course. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. Again, I really had a great time both using this team and testing. Hopefully I will get to use the team again in the future. I hope you get a chance to use the team in the future too, Inosh. And of course, there is a rental code on screen, so you, the viewer, can have a chance to try this team out. There's, of course, also a paste in the description down below. Do you have any final words or shout-outs that you want to give?
Again, shout-outs to Tobacco Coco, Rebecca, and Jono. They were the people who really came up with the team. They're the ones who started off, and they were really kind to talk about the team as I was copying everything that they tried to do, and we chatted a bunch about it, what went well, what went poorly, and between rounds they went and really like gassed me up to like make me feel confident, especially when I was down X2 so early on. Shout outs to Tub Nation. Shout outs to you for like helping come up with the line against Kyrex to like improve that a little bit. Shout outs to like there's too many people, honestly. Like you all know that I love all of you guys. You're all great. You've made Pokemon such a great experience, and thanks for keeping me like involved, because I haven't played in a tournament for more than a year, and I just started laddering again and like put 3 accounts into the top 10 before the tournament, just because like I was loving playing the game and talking about it with you all. You make it a blast even when I'm not playing, and you make it a blast even more so when I am playing. So thanks to all of you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and thank you again for coming on the channel. Congrats on your run, top 4 out of 405 people, I believe.
What a crazy!
That's a huge result, especially to come right back to the game and immediately score a huge top. So yeah, thank you again, and until next time, I will see you all later.
Goodbye.